Well, good morning. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to the Lakewood Next Daily Devotions. This week, we're looking at some of the events of the last week of Jesus' life. And so we're in Matthew chapter 27, and most of this chapter's narrative is about the trial that Jesus has to go through. But our passage today, we're going to find out what happened to one of Jesus' disciples named Judas. And so let me read it, and then we'll talk about it. So Matthew 27, starting in verse 3. Then when Judas, his betrayer, saw that Jesus was condemned, he changed his mind and brought back the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and the elders, saying, I have sinned by betraying innocent blood. And they said, what is that to us? See to it yourself. And throwing down the pieces of silver into the temple, he departed, and he went and he hanged himself. But the chief priest, taking the pieces of silver, said, it is not lawful to put them back in the treasury, since it's blood money. And so they took counsel, and they bought with them the potter's field as a burial place for strangers. Therefore, the field that has been called the field of blood to this day, then was fulfilled what had been spoken by the prophet Jeremiah, saying, and they took the 30 pieces of silver, the price on him whom a price had been set by some of the sons of Israel, and they gave them for a potter's field as the Lord directed me. Okay, so we have Judas, one of Jesus' disciples who he worked with. Judas worked with the chief priest to betray Jesus by handing him over at just the right time to be arrested. And so Judas then feels bad for betraying Jesus, and he tries to undo it, or at least he tries to give the money back. And in this passage, the verse that really stands out to me is verse 7. So Matthew 27:7 says, so they took counsel and bought with them the potter's field as a burial place for strangers. And so rather than putting the money back into the treasury, they buy this potter's field in which they're going to use as a burial for poor people who couldn't afford other accommodations, or for people who didn't have family that would come and claim their body, or people whose identity were unknown. And so Judas's blood money was used to purchase a cemetery for strangers, which is interesting because Judas himself was a stranger to Jesus. And so what am I talking about? You might say, well, he was one of the 12 disciples, and that's true. He was no stranger. But let's look at a passage, and then we'll talk about that. So Matthew 26, what's happening here is Jesus is going to be at the Passover meal with his disciples. And so he's setting up the Lord's Supper. He's setting up communion. So Matthew 26:20. When it was evening, he reclined at table with the 12. And as they were eating, he said, truly I say to you, one of you will betray me. And they were very sorrowful, and they began to say one after another, is it I, Lord? And he answered, he who has dipped his hand in the dish with me will betray me. The Son of Man goes as it is written of him, but woe to that by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been better for that man if he had not been born. And then Judas, who would betray him, answered, is it I, Rabbi? And he said to him, you have said so. And so did you catch that? All of the other disciples ask, is it I, Lord? Everyone except for Judas, who said, is it I, Rabbi? And so that one small response says so much. It says, I think you're a really great teacher. I think you're a nice guy. I think you're a loving guy, but I don't believe that you're Lord of all. And how you respond to Jesus says a lot about you. If Jesus is just a great teacher, you might hear the words of Jesus and it might lead to maybe a few behavior changes. But if Jesus is your Lord, it will fundamentally change your entire existence. If Jesus is your Lord, it will infiltrate and saturate every part of your being. You will let the words of Jesus inform how you live each and every moment of your days. And so who is Jesus to you? Is he a great teacher or is he Lord? I hope you guys have a great day. I'll see you again tomorrow.